All right, we're live.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is House Government Operations and Military Affairs, and we're back. It's 2:30 in the afternoon to discuss S-278 and act relating to cannabis, actually take testimony on. So we'll continue on, and our first witness is Dave Silverman. Dave, would you introduce yourself?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here today. My name is Dave Silverman. I'm an attorney. I specialize in cannabis law. I operate Flora Cannabis. That's Vermont's first ever retail store in beautiful downtown Middlebury. And I direct the Vermont Cannabis Action Fund, also known as VCAF. VCAF, if you're not familiar, is a coalition of over 50 retailers, manufacturers, and cultivators. We focus on improving Vermont's cannabis market with concrete, actionable solutions that support the market as a whole, rather than further dividing the market and trying to pit one type of licensee against another. Before I dive into the substance of S-278 on behalf of VCAF, on a personal level, I wanted to alert you of an important technical issue that has come up recently. It starts with the bedrock of Vermont's cannabis market structure is this thing called the one license rule. It's a single sentence in 7 VSA 901 that prohibits a person from directly or indirectly owning more than one retail license. Without this rule, local operators who have limited access to capital would very quickly be swallowed up by large out-of-state operators. This has been a common occurrence in other states' markets, and it's something that the legislature very wisely chose to prevent from the outset. Over the past 4 years or so, there have been many attempts to circumvent this one license rule. And I will say both the legislature and the CCB have done a very good job of nipping those attempts in the bud. There is another such end run that is being attempted right now. And in this case, they're trying to leverage what they perceive to be a loophole that somehow allows group control of multiple licenses. I've identified a simple change to the definitions of control and affiliate that would serve to support the CCB's correct interpretation of existing law in this current case, and it would help to keep our markets small and local. I've shared this language with the chair, and I hope you'll take that up. So now back to 278. The CCB has given us a roadmap for responsible market growth. It's this supply and demand report that they just recently released, and which you'll find on your committee page. At the joint hearing in February, last time you saw me, you heard me describe a cannabis market suffering from oversupply, from retail oversaturation, from collapsing prices, and from competition on an uneven playing field from both out-of-state stores and illicit sellers, unlicensed sellers. Since then, the CCB released this report, and this report backs up our concerns with hard data and provides a detailed analysis of exactly what is driving consumer choice into the illicit market versus the regulated market. The upshot of the report, I think it's 4 main points. One, only 68% of cannabis being purchased by Vermonters today is being captured by the regulated market. That means nearly a third of total demand is being satisfied by other channels, channels that do not provide the public safety benefits of the regulatory system, nor collect taxes for the state. And in my estimation, we should be focusing our efforts on trying to get those 32% that we're missing. That's low-hanging fruit, rather than trying to, find ways to grow the market, try to capture the whole thing.
Question?
I know, I'm just not in your field of vision. Do you mind if we ask questions while you're talking?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So can you tell me when you're trying to capture that extra, whatever that final third, I'm not saying we should do this, but would lifting things like potency caps and like limits on what goes in a package, would that help, or is that a different issue?
I think lots of different things can help. I will get to the things that I think would be most helpful and are most doable in the limited time that we have.
Okay.
in my testimony. So I will address that.
Okay, and then I have another question that maybe you are also going to address, which is what is the figure for other states that have legalized cannabis? Like, what is there, do you know?
So I don't have current figures for every of the 25 states. I remember last time I looked at Colorado, they were well into the 80s.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So we could be doing better.
Okay, thank
Should
you.
be doing better. So the second main point of the report, they found that the existing retail footprint is sufficient to support local purchasing behavior statewide. That's a quote. Sufficient to support local purchasing behavior. Consumers are not choosing the illicit market because stores are too far away or there's not enough of them. 3, the single most influential factor driving consumers to the unregulated market is Vermont's artificial legal limit on product potency. And 4, the report found that there's broad interest in, and that's a quote, broad interest in purchasing cannabis through, quote, alternative settings, specifically mentioning cannabis cafes, special events, farmers markets, things of that nature. On the other hand, delivery did not make the list as an important driver of consumer choice. So the priorities of my organization, VCAF, for responsible market growth. Bringing more consumers into the regulated market is good for public health. It's good for public safety. It's good for the state budget. And it's good, most importantly, for the safety of cannabis consumers. From my perspective, the most important. And at this late stage in the session, we recommend 2 kind of big impact policy changes. One is 10 milligram edibles. Vermont is an extreme outlier on edible potency. There are only 2 other states, Massachusetts and Connecticut, that limit edibles to 5 milligrams per serving like we do. And Connecticut, by the way, appears poised to go to 10 milligrams. Their House has passed a bill that's now in their Senate to increase that to the national standard of 10. 10 milligrams is not high potency. 10 milligrams is the national standard. If you ask any retailer in this state, they will tell you that customers come into their stores every day asking for 10 milligram edibles and take their business elsewhere. The cannabis industry is fully united on 10 milligram edibles. There is no split in the industry about this. Now, I want to address the public health concerns that have been raised by some advocates around changing potency limits. First, I want to reiterate, Vermont is an extreme outlier on edibles potency. If our 5 milligram limit was delivering tangible public health benefits, we would see it in the data somewhere. We would see it perhaps in measurements like lower ER encounters associated with accidental ingestion cases, lower than the other 23 states that have 10 milligrams. But we don't see that evidence at all. We don't see any evidence that the 5 milligram limit has an extra public health benefit when compared to states that have the national standard of 10 milligrams. And that's what we should be looking at. Is our unique policy choice delivering a benefit over the states that have made a different choice? All we see is people who want their 10 milligram edibles buying it elsewhere. My store is near Lake Champlain. I see my customers go to New York. On the islands, they definitely see people going to Plattsburgh. So, second, it's important to separate the discussion of edibles and their potency from the other discussion around concentrate potency. The concerns that you have heard around things like cannabis hyperemesis syndrome and things like that, those stem from consumption of high potency concentrates, not standard potency 10 milligram edibles. The different risks associated with these 2 products should not be conflated. Talking about them as if they are one thing with the same risk profile serves to confuse, not educate. Our second priority, events and cafes. The CCB's report makes clear that we need new ways to reach our consumers, cannabis customers, outside of dispensaries. And again, the cannabis industry is fully united in favor of creating these new licenses for special events. the cannabis equivalent of a beer tent at a concert or festival, as well as farmers markets where growers can sell at an organized event. And we at VCAF agree that any license type should be able to obtain a permit to host a special event. But to uphold the integrity of the regulatory oversight system, we believe that any non-retailer who hosts an event should be required to contract with a retailer to effectuate that final actual sale to the consumer, using, the appropriate retail level security and training, and through our industry standard inventory management systems that are connected in real time, integrated into the CCB's track and trace system. We think that is critical for maintaining the integrity of the regulatory system. Now, we also want Vermont to join 12 other states now, including Massachusetts and New York, in licensing cannabis cafes and lounges. Think third places where responsible adults can safely enjoy infused foods and beverages in a social atmosphere. The CCB's report, this economic analysis, showed 63% support among cannabis consumers for this type of license type, even more support than for special events. Delivery, on the other hand, has very low consumer demand, according to the economic analysis the CCB put out, and it sharply splits the industry. The delivery model currently envisioned by S278 is opposed by a majority of my coalition's members, with many showing the same concerns raised by the CCB yesterday in their testimony, including my members who support delivery as a concept, having the same concerns about this specific provision. As drafted, we believe that this provision threatens to do more harm than good, further intensifying already overly intense competition for that 68% of the customers we already captured, instead of stabilizing the market and helping us bring in consumers from the illicit market. So I'll quickly turn to other aspects of 278. We support the purchase limit increases in sections 2 through 4. We do want to note that the hash equivalent of 2 ounces is 16 grams, not 10. And we urge that the math just be fixed there. That's a just math incorrect fact.
Could you repeat that?
An ounce of cannabis yields 8 grams of hash. So 2 ounces would yield 16. As currently drafted, the 2 ounces is said to be a 10 milligram equivalent. Now, I know the CCB yesterday talked about equivalence more broadly, and I want to address that quickly as well. Look, we believe the CCB got product equivalencies right for the first 3.5 years of the market. And last fall, they started a process to fix a problem that did not exist. And in that process, the CCB kicked a hornet's nest. And they withdrew that process of trying to redefine what product equivalencies are. We urge both the CCB and this committee to respect the status quo on the ounce to milligram conversion rate and just leave it alone. It has been working well since 2022. There have not been any issues with people buying in our market and reselling outside the market. That was the concern around the 1 ounce limit to begin with. And if there is not a problem, please don't try to fix it. My organization supports the fee reductions in Section 10A. And in fact, we would support further reducing fees for other license types as well. I would especially point you towards the wholesale license fee, which at $4,000 is prohibitive for the level of sales that wholesalers do, the level of profits that wholesalers have. In this bill, there's some really great language about encouraging co-ops. I've long suggested to the market that cooperative wholesalers is a great path to market for cultivators who are having trouble with sales and deliveries and running around to our 115 stores in the state. I think reducing that fee would really allow them to take advantage of this excellent opportunity. We oppose Section 11 of the bill as currently drafted. This is around municipal authority. We urge you to either mandate or create a strong positive incentive for towns to actually hold their retail opt-in votes. Only a third of the 252, I think, towns now in Vermont have ever held a vote. This has led to this unnatural clustering of stores in few municipalities that allow them. So I think, if there is a consternation around requiring a town to take a vote, another idea would be to set a deadline by which a town either has a vote or is deemed to have opted in and be switched to an opt-out regime and allow them to then opt out. But something has to be done on this opt-in constriction of the market. I don't think that's what anyone had in mind in 2022 to only allow retailers in 50 towns in the state without giving the residents of those towns the opportunity to vote on it. We'd also like to see in section 11 some clarification around the municipal ordinance authority to require them to treat cannabis businesses in the same way that they treat similarly situated non-cannabis businesses, so that towns can't single us out unfairly simply due to any lingering anti-cannabis bias. And believe me, there's plenty out there. Look, I know everyone I've ever dealt with in the town of Middlebury, where I am, has always been very professional. But even within that construct, there is a lot of anti-cannabis bias out there. And we just don't want to be in a situation where this accidentally allows towns to make it so hard for cannabis businesses to operate that they really can't, even though they legally, technically could. So I thank you for your time. That is all thank you.
Rep. Waters Evans, do you have a question on this section?
I did, but it's sort of forgot one of them.
I got one. I'll see.
Okay, go for it.
Rep. Hooper?
I'm letting you go.
Oh, Rep.
Raise your hand.
Morgan.
And Dave, just what you were just talking about with the towns and their autonomy or not of opt-in, opt-out. Selectmen in my town as well, we took a vote in our town. It did pass. We do have dispensaries in the town I reside in. But what is the opinion of the total group? Is that just your personal opinion? You think we ought to go down that route of some sort of everybody at some point, date certain needs to opt in and, taking that, it just feels kind of un-Vermont, like just my thoughts of taking away that autonomy from, I don't know. I'd just like to hear more on that.
Yeah, so my group, the 50 plus members of my group are united in wanting something done. And we're not, ideological about this. We just want to see towns take votes. And over at the other chamber, we tried to push a floor amendment just requiring a statewide vote. And that didn't go for, whatever reasons they had down there. I'm very practical. Any solution that you guys are happy with, I'm happy with.
Yeah, I just have to look to the towns having, I don't want us to legislate their entire lives either. And I'm not just saying because of the select, but I just in general think. So that'd be one I'd have to think on.
It's one where it's very unusual where we give towns, this opt-in right. There's not really a whole lot of that in state law elsewhere. And I just think because we didn't create much of an incentive for towns to do it, and because it's quite difficult for people to collect the 5% petition, especially in some of the larger towns, that, we've just, here we are.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll probably talk about it, but yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rep. Waters Evans?
So can you explain to us, because I think maybe not everyone on the committee is familiar with this, it was what is the process for getting a town to vote?
There are two paths.
Yeah.
One is the select board just decides on their own to put the item on a ballot. And that can be at a regular meeting, could be a town meeting, can be a special meeting, can be at election day. The other is to collect petition signatures from 5% of the registered voters in your town. And then the select board would have to put it on the ballot. There's language in the Senate bill here that would clarify that, yes, in fact, it is mandatory. But I'm not familiar with any situation where someone has collected 5% of their town in signatures and then their select board rejected it. I believe everyone's been treating it as mandatory.
We did
To begin with.
We had it put on the
By
ballot.
petition?
Decide.
Okay, so it's just like any other, that's how it usually works if you want to do something. Okay, thanks.
Laura Cooper?
Dave, did you just say that you can get the select board to draft an article on election day?
Sure, the select board can have
I
a,
didn't know that.
Floor vote.
yeah, well, so this one has to be by law, it has to be a Australian ballot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can put a town article, as long as you give sufficient warning, you can put it on any. It would make sense to me to do it on a day you're already doing an election, rather than try to do a.
No,
simple vote.
I'm sorry, well, I thought you were saying that the select board could draft the article on election day. That doesn't seem right.
No, they could draft it and pull the vote on.
That's right.
They have to warn it properly.
5 days.
Any other questions for Mr. Silver? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. And we'll
Thank you.
go back to Jeffrey. They both just stepped out for a minute, so we'll move on to Jill. Would you like to come up, please, and introduce yourself? Hi.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jill Sothoff-Kieran, and today I'm representing the Medical Society, the Pediatrics of Vermont chapter, and the Vermont Family Physicians. We are happy to be able to comment that we're not opposed to S-278 as it passed the Senate. We're grateful for the decisions that they made around maintaining our public health protections within our recreational market. And we urge your committee to maintain these protections. My testimony is not going to be very long today. It's going to be fairly brief, but what I've submitted to the committee as 3 of the priorities for the public health community that we would like you to maintain. And that includes maintaining the 60% THC potency cap for solid concentrates. And I've got a bunch of fairly new research on that I've included in the testimony if you want to read it. And we also urge you to keep the advertising regulations that we have in place right now. And then we also would say, let's keep the excise tax where it is. As you know, 30% of the tax revenue goes into substance misuse prevention. And we have a very robust prevention system that Vermont has built out. There are 4 regional, they're called PLOs, and they're doing amazing work within the communities and working with community organizations. Going back to what's in the bill now, I would just say that the public health community has really worked with the CCB and the legislature to ensure that we have a protective recreational cannabis market. We provide evidence-based data. We recommend regulatory frameworks and, work to share what's happening in the field, in the ER, with the potential risks of cannabis overuse. And, our focus is really on preventing youth access, reducing high potency product consumption, and making sure that our labeling and packaging make sure that there's transparency for the consumers and that people are safe. We do have a couple of remaining concerns in 278, and we do not support increasing the package size from 100 milligrams to 200 milligrams. And that's largely because of what we see in our ERs when our little ones get into cannabis packaging. And actually, in 2025, the American College of Medical Toxicology put out a position statement recommending limiting the maximum total package content to 50 milligrams, just to decrease that risk of the kids getting into it. And this panel does, just to answer anybody's question, this panel does recommend keeping it to that 5 milligram size. And they actually say the safest thing to do, and some states are doing this, is going to a single serving packaging. And our own emergency doc at UVMMC, he's also a toxicologist from Northern New England Poison Center. I put his quote in there, but really when he's talking about what happens when kids accidentally ingest these THC products is they can get extremely sedated and they can actually stop eating and stop breathing and sometimes have to be intubated. So that's why we're concerned about package size. Other than that, we don't have any other things to say about the bill, except we're a little concerned about the event permit pilots and the delivery permit pilots. Can those be done safely? We don't support public consumption. And so, do we have the capacity of the CCB to make sure that all of our public health and public safety protections are going to be able to be put in place for these things? And that's all I have for you today.
Thank you. I guess I'm surprised that you have just listed a bunch of things that you need to see maintained, and you have several concerns, but you're still overall supportive of the bill.
No, I wouldn't say supportive is actually not the right word. Not
Why,
opposed.
please, not opposed.
Not opposed. We understand there's probably some things in here that the market would like. We worked really hard with the Senate to maintain our public health protections. And like I said, those 3 core pieces of the potency caps, the advertising regulations, and the excise tax, we see as the most important. And so, like I said, we've really moved to trying to work with the CCB and trying to work within the market to make sure that there are public health protections and we believe those strengthen the market.
And much appreciated that your willingness to work with the CCB and with the legislature on this to get it right. Any questions for Jill? This moment. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Jeffrey. Welcome. Sorry you had trouble getting here.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, committee. Some handouts here. There's 3 packets. We can pass them out. You should.
You could just start by introducing yourself when you're ready.
There's certainly,
So there's 3.
There's 3. Yes, exactly.
There's 3 different documents.
Exactly. And there might be some extra, which I'll. Okay. All right. Thank you all. I know it's been a busy day, busy week. And thanks for your understanding with my arrival. Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Jeffrey Pisatella. I am the co-founder and executive director of Vermont Growers Association. I just want to say, we've seen this committee take on many important matters, this General Assembly. So we want to recognize and thank you for that work and your time and energy on this still nascent regulated market, which has been ongoing. So thank you for your time, not just on hemp and cannabis, but on other issues as well. Good to see some of you, some familiar faces, some new faces, to use your time well during my testimony. And if I may ask, pause for a minute. How much time are you affording us? Just so I can.
We don't really have a strict time limit, although I do know that some of us need to leave around 4:00 and we have.
Okay, great.
3 other witnesses besides yourself.
Terrific.
So there's approximately an hour left to divide up between 3 of you.
Okay, great. Great, terrific. Thank you for that. It's very helpful. So to use this time wisely, I'm going to just make some brief introductions. I see some new members. So I'll talk a little bit about myself and our organization. Then I'll spend a couple minutes talking about the Vermont market. We're about 4 years in. And then sort of broadly how we see the economics of cannabis markets in general. Just a couple minutes on that. They are unique markets, so we want to impart some of our perspective on this committee. And then we're going to proceed to specific recommendations for Bill S-278. And that's what those handouts before you should reflect. So the first one is my written testimony, which I'm going to verbalize. Maybe skip some sections in the interest of time. The next packet is the Vermont Cannabis Equity Coalition's bill recommendations, section by section. And then the last packet is the coalition's legislative priorities for 2026. So pretty comprehensive handouts there. So starting with introductions, as I mentioned earlier, my name is Jeffrey Pizzatello. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Vermont Growers Association. I myself am a long-time legacy market cultivator here in Vermont for a couple of decades now. I've got some pretty deep roots with the state. And myself and other local small legacy producers. And when I use the word legacy, I'm referring to the unregulated market, the illicit market. It's got a couple names. We try to avoid black market just for we don't want to feed into stigma. So I often use legacy or unregulated interchangeably. So some context there. So we set up Vermont Growers Association in March of 2019, along with some other local producers. And the purpose of us forming is to support an equitable, craft-centric cannabis marketplace through advocacy, education, and marketing. Resource development, business development, workshops, community building events, and more. Vermont Growers Association, we're very proud that it is the oldest member-based nonprofit organizing and representing the adult use space. Though we have growers in our name, we do represent the entire supply chain. So we have retailers, manufacturers, labs, and ancillary businesses such as banks and insurance companies that are our members as well. Vermont Growers Association is proud that we practice coalition advocacy, and you may be familiar with the Vermont Cannabis Equity Coalition. That is an interstate coalition comprised of other member-based nonprofit organizations. One of them is here, so that includes Rural Vermont, NOFA Vermont, the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance, Green Mountain Patients Alliance. And collectively, we feel like that coalition represents the local communities in the state that are most impacted and have the greatest stake in the cannabis marketplace. And I want to stress that the cannabis marketplace includes both adult use and the medical cannabis program as well. The medical cannabis program often doesn't get as much airtime as its stakeholders would like in the State House, but we hope to change that perhaps with this committee. In addition to being a founding member of the Vermont Cannabis Equity Coalition, we're also very proud that BJ is a founding member of the National Craft Cannabis Coalition. So the National Craft Cannabis Coalition advocates and organizes for national cannabis policy that includes the interests of small farms and businesses in Washington, D.C. We're very proud that the NCCC has earned the support of several other national organizations. Some of them you may be familiar with: NORML, the Drug Policy Alliance, the Parabola Center for Law and Policy, and I believe that you've had a witness earlier this session from the Parabola Center from Massachusetts. And we're very proud that those organizations supported NCCC's work through the Small Homestead Independent Producers Act, what's called the SHIP Act. The SHIP Act is something that we developed in 2022, and it was the first piece of legislation in Congress in this nation's history that began to bring forward the interests of small businesses and farms in the cannabis space. We're very proud of that work. Largely a messaging bill. Washington, D.C. is a little bit of a mess right now, especially around cannabis and hemp. But we think nonetheless it's important to include the voices of small and independent producers and businesses in that national conversation. So we operate at the state level and then also at the federal level when it comes to cannabis law. So please feel free to ask us any questions, not just about state law, but also about what's happening in the federal level as well. Today, I'm going to be giving my testimony as a member of the Vermont Cannabis Equity Coalition. So moving past introductions, a little bit about the market and as we see how cannabis markets in general. So Vermont's adult use market is nearly 4 years old. And to this day, cannabis transactions, a majority of cannabis transactions take place in the unregulated market here in Vermont. That's important framing for this conversation for Bill 278. I'll say that again. Vermont's adult use market is nearly 4 years old, and to this day, most cannabis transactions in this state take place in the unregulated market. We'll discuss why.
Yeah, you're gonna ask the question that I think I was gonna ask.
Right. Do you
Go
want to
ahead.
ask it?
No, thank you. Go ahead.
No, thank you. So the previous witness said that it's 2/3 of them are, I believe it was 68%, right? That were legal
Yes.
transactions. So I'm confused just about the disparity, like where
Sure.
the data is coming from.
Sure. I can say our data is coming from, and that's before you that's money. It's coming, no problem. It's coming from Whitney Economics. Whitney Economics is the country's leading cannabis economics firm. They are the most prestigious cannabis economics firm in the country. They advise governments and also on the global scale as well. So there are differences of opinion out there. And we believe that this firm has the most merit, and so do other state governments. They were contracted by New York State for their equity program, Massachusetts, and others. So that's where we get that number from. And in fact, in my next sentence, to continue and answer that question, Representative, the country's leading cannabis economics firm, Whitney Economics, reports that in 2024, on average, across all 24 adult use states, approximately 29.4% of all cannabis transactions occurred in the regulated market. So that means 70% of cannabis transactions in states with regulated markets take place outside of the regulated market. That's what this economics firm has assessed, which is widely held across the country amongst individual states and advocacy groups and also regulators as well. So this is widely recognized. And that's important because I'll unpack that a little bit more in my testimony. But what that means is, on average, every state with an adult use market, including Vermont, an overwhelming majority of the market share, 70% on average, takes place outside of the regulated market. We don't necessarily view that as a policy failure. Policymakers had good intentions when they were devising these regulatory frameworks, but we do believe that it provides an opportunity. And that's what I want to lead into with my testimony. So what is that opportunity? Those opportunities are policies for reform that overlap between economic development, market viability, competitiveness, justice, and the original intent of the enabling statute here in Vermont, which is Act 164 in 2020. Some of you were around for that. And that stated intent is to equitably transition the state's small cannabis producers, which by extension means their customer base, into the regulated market for the purposes of public safety. So tying it back to the intent of this body back in 2020 with our enabling statute. So to continue, while the nation's leading cannabis economics firms report that on average, about 30% of all cannabis transactions in states with adult use markets take place in the regulated market, Vermont, we feel, did a much better job than most other states in crafting a regulated market that is accessible for local, unregulated producers, the farmers and the product makers that existed in the black market here in Vermont for several decades. You all did a pretty good job of making the regulated market accessible to them. And we also did some things different from other states. And some of those things include home occupancy exemptions for small producers. That is allowing them to cultivate or make products in their place of residence. That's incredibly important. Most states don't have that. Also, allowing outdoor cultivators to place, to grow on land in current use. That's also incredibly important. Most states do not do that. We also afford some of the regulatory benefits of farming for those outdoor cultivators as well, whether it's sales tax exemptions and whatnot. So some of those reforms that Vermont chose to embark that other states did not likely captured a greater share of the market. We believe in Vermont, that number to be closer to 40%, so about 10% above the national average. So our perspective is right now, about 4 years in, the market that we created has captured around 40% of the total market share. So let's unpack that a little bit more. So why are adult use cannabis markets unable to capture a majority of the state's potential market share, even in states like Vermont that did a better job than most? This is why. In the mid 2010s, when adult use cannabis policy first emerged, and those first two states were Colorado and Washington State, recall, those were the first states to develop a commercial cannabis marketplace. And their initial focus was on public safety, and understandably so. This is something that's been criminalized. It was illegal, grown and sold in the shadows. States are now bringing it on board and developing frameworks. That first impression, that first direction for that approach for the development of these markets was around public safety. The concerns at that time regarding underage access, impaired driving, societal impacts. Some of these themes may be familiar to those who were around during, 164, the original legislation deliberation. And also, in totality, those dominated policy formation at that time: impaired driving, youth concerns, social societal impacts. And then as a result, we're about over a decade now into these markets. We've now assessed that they've devised a market design that mandates things like a multi-tier distribution system that's centered on retailers, distributors, and all of that disadvantages, it comes to realize, disadvantages small craft producers and promotes things like integration and consolidation. And that's exactly what we're seeing play out here in Vermont right now. And that's also what we see play out and across all the 24 states with regulated markets. So it's not exactly good news, but again, these are opportunities. And so economists suggest, in addition to everything that I just said, in addition to the sort of public health focus on the development of these regulated markets through focusing on things like underage access, impaired driving, and societal impacts. In addition to all of that, economists suggest, for several different reasons, that a significant portion of the unregulated market customer base will not participate in a regulated market unless they can purchase directly from a producer. So I'll say that again. Economists suggest that for several different reasons, a significant portion of the unregulated cannabis market customer base will not participate in the regulated market unless they can purchase directly from a producer. So why does that make sense? That makes sense if you think about it. The unregulated market, the black market, the illicit market, which has been forever defined as local small growers and makers, do a couple things. They either sell their products that they grow and produce directly to their own customer base, many of whom then develop a loyal customer base. And then also they sell wholesale to, say, dealers. That is the black market or the unregulated market.
Wait, you said they sell wholesale to who?
Dealers.
Oh, I thought you said kids.
No,
Okay.
no.
I was like, that's just like a problem.
And so we're painting a picture of what Vermont and every state's illicit or regulated or black market, unregulated market has looked like forever. And that's important because that speaks to the unique characteristics of this regulated cannabis market.
You have a question?
No, I keep asking them before everyone answers them, so I'm gonna wait.
Okay, I do have a question though.
Sure.
I'm not really sure we can compare the Vermont illicit market to like a big city's illicit market.
Good point.
Because you're talking about small local farmers, growers.
Correct.
And I'm not picturing that in New York City or San Francisco or anywhere else.
Great comment, Vice Chair. And what that means is because Vermont is more of an agrarian state, our black market, which I was a partner for over 20 years, we have way more producers and farmers that sell directly to customers. And these are like neighbors down their block, really. And less, say, dealers where you may find them in Austin and more built up cities. So we have them, but it's important to recognize the realities of that market because we're trying to attract them into the regulated space. So great point. And so, yep.
Oh, Rep. Pincinel.
So I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around it.
Sure.
And this morning's testimony was trying to compare flower to the cannabis to the, so when we're talking cannabis market, we're talking after the flower has been processed and it becomes I'm still trying to figure out at what point does it become cannabis, I guess? I don't know.
Well,
Sure.
first of all, this morning we were talking about hemp. And that is a little bit different product. And we also have a chart on our webpage, I think it's yesterday's, that kind of breaks down the terminology that might help you.
So
So cannabis.
Continue on.
if I may jump in.
Unless you have a really specific question that you need to ask. Rep. Pincinel?
No, if you can explain it in layman's
Okay.
terms, again.
Okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead.
no problem. And just for the committee's own edification, cannabis is interchangeable with cannabis flower, smokable flower in this context. And I believe that is the sort of statutory definition for Vermont in the regulated space. By contrast, we have cannabis, which is smokable flower, and then cannabis products. And those would be packaged products, ranging anything from, say, gummies to hash. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Okay.
If that provides some clarity. And so as we sort of round out unpacking what the unregulated market is, in the illicit market, historically, those producers would either sell directly, wholesale, or do a little bit of both. And that's the reality of the market here in Vermont. And since market share is finite, committee, that means that the regulated market has to outcompete the unregulated market. If there's a pie, we're fighting over that market share. It's as simple as that. And so that's our perspective on unregulated and regulated markets. So continuing on, regulated markets won't ever capture 100% of the unregulated market share, and they don't need to. They just need to capture a majority of the customer base to become viable, which means that for regulated markets to become viable, they need to attract that tight-knit customer base loyal to unregulated producers. That's really important. And if you speak to licensed producers right now, they will tell you they know dozens of people who do not engage the regulated market because for whatever reason, they refuse to go into a retail shop. They would much rather and will not engage the regulated market until they can purchase directly from the producer that they've been doing for decades. That's really, really important. And so bringing it back to Vermont, what this means is once those customers can then purchase products from their producers, they will then be more inclined to visit a retail shop, especially those producers with good relationships with retailers. This is a familiar market dynamic here in Vermont. This is an agricultural market. And what I want to impart on this committee is the importance of strong relationships between farmers, local grocery stores, farmers markets, CSAs, cooperatives, and the reciprocal economic growth from that market dynamic is well known across Vermont and I think in the State House when it comes to every agricultural commodity except for cannabis. And what we're asking of you is to consider cannabis in a similar manner. We do not think that cannabis should be regulated and is freely available as, say, tomatoes or other vegetables. We believe in a well-regulated market, but those principles for the economics of the market remain the same. And so that's one of the major reasons why regulated markets are unable to capture a majority of the market share, because that market share is most familiar with engaging directly with producers. And we're over 10 years into this experiment with these sorts of markets outside of Vermont. Colorado, Washington State, they first commercialized cannabis in 2013. So we now have a pretty strong body of evidence of the limitations of these market designs. And so that's why Whitney Economics assesses those figures for adult use markets. So back in Vermont, because of the market design policy choices such as retail opt-in, which you all have heard of from earlier today, that created a patchwork of municipalities that have shops and that don't have shops. That's approximately 32% of all towns in the state. About 78 out of 247 municipalities allow for retail sales. That's a structural bottleneck that would damage any other market, whether it's beer, cheese, or cannabis. If you could only sell and make available those products in 32% of our towns, that's a structural bottleneck. So that is not necessarily overproduction, that is lack of access. Also, over 160 cultivators and manufacturers have relinquished their licenses since initial licensing in 2022. With the leading reasons for exiting as reported to the CCB being market access and profitability. So again, that speaks to exactly that market access issue that I talked about a moment ago. Mandated multi-tier distribution markets lead to integration and consolidation. They squeeze small producers out of the market who cannot get by on wholesale alone. If a regulated market does not provide some sort of direct market distribution to producers, the unregulated market will continue to outcompete it. It's as simple as that. The question before you and your colleagues is, would you prefer to capture that market share and potentially capture that potential tax revenue, or leave it in the unregulated space and leave it up to our neighboring states' markets as well? We're actively absorbing those sales. Any questions?
So I think I will ask you if you would give your recommendations to the committee, because we're just about a third of the way through that hour that we
Certainly.
talked about in the beginning of the session.
Certainly.
Thanks.
Of course. So moving into the recommendations, there are 32 sections of the bill. I'm going to touch upon 3 to 4 key areas. So
I was just going to tell you, but I may not have this correct. I'm not sure you have the right version. Let me just take a really quick. Yeah, I'm not certain. Yours says,
as passed by the Senate.
okay, that is it. Yours said draft 3.2 and ours does not. So yes, we're working off of as passed by the Senate.
Okay, great. And so are we.
Perfect.
Thank you. So the 4 key areas that we want to touch upon, and I urge you to please review our coalition's markup of the bill. We have some sections of the bill that have been removed, and we ask that you consider restoring them to this legislation. The first key discussion item is section 28, and that's appropriations. This was a 2-part appropriation in section 28, 1 million to the Cannabis Business Development Fund and 1.6 million to the Land Access and Opportunity Board. We see that framing as to characterize those 2 appropriations. The first one, the Cannabis Business Development Fund, is reinvestment back into the industry. That's something that is essential, that is missing from this regulated space. Other sectors, whether it's farming or other commercial goods sectors, have technical and financial assistance available to them. Because of the federal designation for cannabis, federal coffers are not available for state programs and funding and supporting of these businesses, as I believe many of you may be aware. So as a result, we need to spin up our own version of support, whether it's technical or financial assistance. And that comes in the form of, in Vermont, so for the Cannabis Business Development Fund. Putting that to aside, the LEOB, the Land Access and Opportunity Board, we see that as a mechanism of community reinvestment. Something to keep in mind is community reinvestment in general is appropriated at the state level, and on average, about 25% of the cannabis excise tax in various states is directed to community reinvestment, 25%. I believe New York State does 40%. Right now, we do 0. And that's not just roads, that's not just schools or, community centers. That's also other areas, whether it's access to land, access to housing, aspects that you need, that one would need to participate in this regulated market. And that's what we're asking you to consider. And if appropriations is not appropriate for this committee, if that's outside of the purview of this committee, then we would ask that you work with the appropriate committees and colleagues in the House to restore that funding for the Cannabis Business Development Fund and community reinvestment purposes through the LEOB.
I think that we recommended both of them out of this committee, and just so you know, a committee of conference has now been announced today for the budget.
Okay.
So the House and the Senate are differing, and those are the items to be brought to the members who are going to be on the committee of conference. So we'll make sure that we look at our recommendations and go forward with that.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it up.
The second item that I'd like to raise is medical program reforms, medical cannabis program reforms. The agency, the CCB, in its Act 166 report from 2024, recommends to the General Assembly what we feel are non-controversial, very reasonable medical cannabis reforms. And that is moving oversight of symptoms and conditions out of the State House and into the CCB, appointing a board that would then develop recommendations on an annual basis for the symptoms and conditions that are eligible for the medical cannabis program. Instead of deliberating, say, medical conditions and science in committees such as this. Other states have stood up a similar structure. We support the CCB's recommendation to do as such. We ask that if this committee is not the appropriate committee to discuss that reform for the medical cannabis program, that you work with your colleagues in other committees in this House chamber to do as such. And again, that is coming from the Cannabis Control Board itself. We wanted to lift up that recommendation and see some sort of movement this session for improving the medical cannabis program. That is an important, sensitive demographic that should be included in this bill as well.
If I'm not mistaken, that's not our jurisdiction, our area of jurisdiction, and it could be with House Human Services, but we'll find out the answer to that as well. Thank you.
No, thank you. And then maybe to conclude here, we're asking, outside of addressing those missing sections, important reforms that everyday Vermonters are interested in seeing. We're also asking that you consider strengthening some of the provisions in this bill. So, for example, jumping down to the delivery permit. So we're asking, with all the context that I gave previously in my testimony today, that you all consider measures such as adding on-site as an option. So not mandating delivery, but allowing producers the option of either delivering or doing on-site to sell products directly in a well-regulated manner. That's because some producers are not comfortable allowing the general public to visit their facility, and some are. And so we don't want to pigeonhole producers. We want to give them that safety, that mechanism, that option to interface in an area, in a space that's most comfortable for them. So whether that's delivery or on-site, that's a proposal consideration that we would ask that you consider to strengthen the delivery permit.
So that's on site of the producer's facility, direct to consumer.
Correct. Correct. We also ask that you at least bring the number of permits for what we would consider the on-site and delivery permit to 30. Right now, it's at 15. The event permit is 20. We do not know where the 15 number came from, but we at least recommend parity with the event permit. And the reason why we suggest 30 is because there are a significantly there are more licensed producers than any other license type. There's something like close to 400. And so we think that just reflects that makeup of issued licenses.
I think the events are not the number you just said.
I believe it's,
The delivery is 15, but I feel like the events is 10.
should be 10 public and 10 private. I believe.
That I will have to look through the bill on because I'm only remembering 10 total. But I could be wrong. So, hey, any questions at this moment for our witness?
No.
Anything further you want to add?
No, and I guess in closing, I'm not sure how long this committee is going to be deliberating this legislation, but I would ask that you consider making time for local stakeholders. There are many very smart, very dedicated, very compliant small producers, retailers, and the like that would love to come in here and share and speak to some of these interests and positions. And I ask you to consider that in the coming weeks.
Thank you. We certainly have a list of folks who are interested in submitting written testimony. A lot of people already have, and also people who are willing to come and testify in person. And I can't answer how long we're going to be dealing with this bill, but the end of the session is coming, so we may find out that we have to get it out of here quickly, or we may have another couple of weeks.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for coming in. Mariah,
Yes, hi, can you
Yeah,
see
okay.
me on the screen?
we do not see you, but we can hear you.
Well, great, halfway there. I have a few slides. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I know why you can't see me. I wanted to make sure I didn't share my screen until you were ready.
There you are.
Hello, sorry. I have a few slides. Should I share those on the screen or do you have them already there? I
I'm
sent them
gonna
earlier.
take a look. If you sent them earlier, we should have them.
Yep.
Okay, I'm hearing that we do have them on our webpage, so you don't have to share your screen if you don't want to go through that trouble, and you can
I
just.
don't mind doing it if I'm allowed to. It's fine.
You are allowed to, but we do all have them, so
Okay.
it's entirely your pleasure.
Okay. Sorry. It looks like sharing's not available anyway, so I'll
We
tell
could
you when
enable that if you need it.
I don't need it. I just wanted you to know which slide I was talking about when I was talking about it. But I'm good. That's fine.
Okay,
Don't,
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today. My name is Mariah Flynn. I use she/her pronouns. I'm a certified prevention specialist. And I work as the coalition director for the Burlington Partnership for a Healthy Community. We're a substance misuse prevention coalition that serves Burlington. And sorry, I just realized I should probably have the slides for myself. If you look at that slide, the first slide that's on the 3 that I sent you, our work is in community level prevention. So we're looking at what are the root causes of substance misuse in a community at the community level. So on the right of that slide, you see there's the Vermont prevention model, which has the different levels at which you can provide intervention to support prevention of substance misuse, looking at systems and organizational, community, and personal. And our work is mostly in the community level. So what that means is that we're looking at implementing strategies that help prevent folks from developing a substance use disorder. And we do that in a lot of different ways through supporting education, by helping to improve community design, by supporting increased community connection. Basically, our overall goal is to help make it easier for people to make informed and healthy choices about substance use. So because of that, I spend a lot of my time looking at data and emerging research about cannabis. And I've been interested and involved in Vermont's conversations and policy changes about cannabis for a long time. And one of the reasons I'm paying particular attention to cannabis is that in Burlington, where I work, and in my conversations I have with other folks in Vermont, cannabis continues to be the substance where I most often see the biggest disconnect between what we've learned in the last 10 or 15 years from the research about it and what the public understanding or knowledge is about the substance. People's understanding of cannabis just really has not yet caught up to the science. And so I reached out to the Senate back in February about my concerns with the bill as it was initially introduced, because I was worried about the negative public health impacts, particularly on young people in the original proposal. And I do want to, similar to Jill, commend those who recognize that some of that initial proposal in the bill to reduce regulations was not in the best interest of the public. And as someone working in substance use prevention, I was concerned that in the initial bill, it read kind of like a marketing strategy for cannabis. And some of the things like the reduced advertising restrictions, the increased potency, the reduced taxes, removing the community's voice to opt in at local sales have been removed. And I just want to reiterate my appreciation for that those were the recognition that those are not in the best interest of the public and being removed and kind of continuing to keep it that way. There are still some things in the bill that I think are places to be a little concerned and to think about what the impact might be on the public. In the interest of time, I just want to share a couple of points that are relevant to my field that I hope you'll keep in mind as you're looking at this bill. The first is that Vermont has the highest reported use of cannabis in the nation. And we also have one of the highest rates, when you break that out by different demographics, we also have one of the highest rates of use in the US among our youth populations and our young adults. And so to me, this is not an area that we want to be number one in. And because young brains are still developing, they're very much more susceptible to developing an addiction or a substance use disorder. And so we really need to be thoughtful about any policies that focus on giving more access to cannabis. Things like increased purchase limits and product sizes and events where people are using in public. Those are the types of things that to me are concerning given where Vermont stands in our issues with cannabis use already. What we really need in Vermont right now are strategies that acknowledge that our high cannabis use rates are a problem and are working to address it. So we really need a well-funded public health campaign to educate Vermonters about the health risks of cannabis so that we can help people catch up to the science. And we need policies that work further upstream and put more guardrails in so that so many people don't keep falling into the river of addiction and needing more intensive resources downstream. So that's one of the things that I think about when I was looking at this bill. And the other consideration is just how much adult-focused policies, things that are about supporting adult use, have an impact on youth. And I think partially because cannabis commercialization in Vermont started during a pandemic. I'm still learning about all the ways that our current cannabis laws, things that we did just a few years ago, are impacting Burlington and our youth. And we're still learning a lot about that. So one of the things I hear, we do a lot of work with partners in our school district in Burlington, and the counseling department has been talking. The folks who are working with kids in our counseling department have been talking a lot about the fact that kids still have a lot of confusion about cannabis, and they're getting a lot of mixed messages about it because they're seeing it normalized in more and more parts of the community. And we're also seeing this issue, you might have heard maybe in other bills you're looking at, that nicotine vaping products are becoming so accessible and prolific at the same time, right? It was happening around the same time as the pandemic, and at the same time we legalized cannabis. And so you're seeing kids, this like interchanging in our schools of cannabis and nicotine vaping and product use. And that seems like it might be leading to the problem we're having, which is that in our schools, kids who are starting to use are progressing in the addiction cycle much faster than we used to see in the past. And so something to think about as we're, again, thinking about more access to substances. What does that mean for this cycle that kids are in right now? On the second slide that I have there, you can see that results of a survey that we do. So we work with our schools district to implement a survey every 2 years with the middle and high schools. And one of the questions we ask students is we give them a list of about 19 different issues that could impact a young person's life that students have come up with. And we ask students to rank them as either a big concern, somewhat of a concern, or not at all a concern for the young people in their school and in their community of Burlington. So on the screen you can, or I'm sorry, in your in your slide deck, you can see that in 2023 and 2025 for our middle and high schoolers, that issue of vaping that I talked about is coming up in the top levels of concern for them across both, across middle and high school and across 2023 and 2025. It's continuing to be an issue that they see as a top concern. But one thing that was new in our most recent round in 2025 is that cannabis or marijuana use has also joined in one of their top concerns, which to me is a flag of, okay, for some reason this is popping up to them as more concerning to pay attention to now. I don't know what, we don't have all the reasons why that is, but something that I wanted to flag for you as something that kids in our schools are noticing as an issue.
That's interesting. And also I noticed alcohol is not on any of their lists.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see what pops up and why, and our questions don't dig into that anymore, but yeah. And then I'll leave you with Leanna, which is on our third slide. And so right now I'm working with my partners in the Burlington School District on a kind of last minute urgent thing that we decided we needed to do to bring parents together in the high school, because there's a particular grade in our school of one of the younger grades at the high school that's really having a hard time with cannabis use in school and alcohol use also in school. And we, I think, need to bring parents together to wrap them with support. And to me, it just flagged for, like, one of the reasons I was thankful to be able to come here today is to have an opportunity to just say, please slow down with the idea of kind of increasing access to substances and be really thoughtful about it, about how quickly we push Vermont to increase access to more and more cannabis, which I think is somewhat of what you see in this bill. We're still learning about all the ways that the current access might be negatively impacting our most vulnerable Vermonters, like our kids. And I'm needing more help to figure out how to address that and how to help make our policies best support our young people in the community. And this is Leanna in the last slide. Leanna is a 9th grader now at Burlington High School, but she took these pictures last year when I worked with her at Edmonds Middle School, and she was in 8th grade. She wanted to show what images she walks by on her way to and from school when she's out in her community. Edmonds Middle School and the high school where she is now, Burlington High School, are both in downtown Burlington. And so she's walking up and down Church Street regularly and around the downtown area. And on her walk, just in this one block you see on the left, she walks by 2 bars and 3 cannabis shops right in the downtown, right in one block. And there's more if you keep going, right? I think to me, this is a visual sign of the normalization of substance use, telling her about what adults in her community value as important. And before we keep thinking about how we continue to add to those high cannabis use rates in Vermont that I mentioned earlier by offering more public places to use cannabis and bigger purchase limits and product size, from the area of the community that I think about, or the field that I work in, I would urge us to put just as much time to think about how we can improve the public understanding of the health risks of use and consider how the current landscape is impacting young people and normalizing cannabis use for the next generation. For Leanna's generation, the cannabis available has a lot higher potency than previous generations, and use carries a lot more potential short-term and long-term risks. So I'm hopeful that we can find a way to make it just as easy for Leanna and her friends to access good information and a healthy community as it is for adults to get more and more cannabis. So I appreciate your time. That's all I had, but I'm open to questions if you have any.
Thank you. I appreciate the real world example, the lived experience. That was a great example. Does anybody have any questions for our witness? Rep. Boyden.
Yeah. At the beginning, you shared that Vermont has the highest reported rate of cannabis use. I was just wondering where that data would come from, or if you could share that report with us.
I can share. I would guess that it's probably also in the testimony that Jill shared. I think she has a link to that same data, but I'll send my testimony and include the link to that. I believe it's from the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, which is done across the U.S.
Thank you.
Any questions? No, well, thank you very much for being with us. You're welcome to listen on Zoom if you like, or if you have something else you need to go to, you're welcome to leave as well.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify for Jeffrey that yes, the bill says 10 private and 10 public events. I checked on that, event permits. So yeah, you're welcome. Sorry, I didn't know that off the top of my head. And we have Nathan and Tim from ACCD, and I don't know which one wants to go first. So please have a seat, welcome, and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. Happy last day, April.
Thank you.
My name is Tim Tierney. I am the Senior Economic Development Director for the Agency of Commerce and Community Development within the Department of Economic Development. I'm here with Nathan Davidson, who is our economic specialist. We both oversee what we call the Cannabis Social Equity Program. And I'm going to give you just a little brief history on that, and then I'll give a real quick request. So in fiscal year 22, and then July 21st of 2022, our department received an appropriation of $500,000. And someone asked, what is this about? So there we found out that we actually were in charge, newly charged to oversee a cannabis social equity program, which then I took the initiative with then specialist Randall Zott to stand up a program to provide social equity determined participants in the cannabis industry to to provide technical assistance and access to capital. So we did some thorough research of states that provide these programs, mostly in Oakland, California, Colorado, Massachusetts. We found out what worked and what didn't work with programs that they had. We then developed a program and found out that one thing, we could not provide loans. There's no one in the state that does loans. State government does not do loans. We do not. There's no one even in the state that we could actually pass through money to provide loans because there's no federal guarantee when it comes to cannabis. So we actually asked our agency administration, can we provide beneficiary payments, which is not a grant program. A grant program, which we administer many of, would require probably a bigger threshold, more friction for participants. And these folks and the social equity folks are basically, you might know this already, folks who are Black, Hispanic, marginalized communities from the past, or someone who's has been or is related to or directly related to a person who was incarcerated due to cannabis laws. So the Cannabis Control Board actually tells us who is a determined social equity applicant. What we have is we then put out a request for a proposal around the whole country for people to bid on someone that would provide technical assistance. And the main theme was someone that had actually dealt with social equity population. That was the most important thing to us. And we found a group in Massachusetts. They were we thought the best provider of technical assistance. And that means they're helping out with business planning, marketing. Nathan, help me here. What else we got?
Bookkeeping and finance, building out their QuickBooks website. We just got a report with that done for the bank closet. You said design, marketing, IT development, HR, process development. So it's a wide range.
And they do a very long intake interview with every company. We now have, a pretty good set of applicants who utilize this program, and they can in direct contact with this Rhodes Consulting out of Massachusetts. And every year, every time they relicense, they can actually apply, very simple application, to receive on a beneficiary payment every time a social equity person, individual in a business, to receive a beneficiary payment of $5,000. So we found that initially we had a $500,000 appropriation, and we thought it was a one-time appropriation, which it was, and we didn't know how many applicants were going to come. We've since received two other $500,000 appropriations, and we also received $50,000 licensure fees that were required, I believe, by the labs. And we also received some donations to the program. And by the way, state government financial management systems do not like donations, we found out. So but we got them into the fund. So we have basically, and maybe you can help me, Nathan, again, about $350,000 remaining in that fund.
At this point, and I'm not sure if I should be saying my name and title for the record.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I realize that. But
It's okay.
Nathan Davidson, Vermont Department of Economic Development, as an economic development specialist. We have around 267,000 remaining. All right.
So, and this year, we are aware that tier one manufacturers and cultivators are in need of assistance. And, we can provide technical assistance and training programs. And Nathan actually stood up a program this year using the Vermont State University program to actually have social equity participants attend a seminar on advanced marketing. We found there's, and even all kinds of different things we can help them with. But it also allows other folks to attend those at a lesser fee outside of social equity. So we're trying to do that more, and realizing that, contacted by the CCB, that tier one needs more technical assistance and business help. And therefore, I think that's what was put in here, that if there was $1 million appropriation, we were more than happy to be a pass-through to find a service provider that could actually provide more agronomy, that's one thing that's missing. I think that the agronomy help, we don't do that. Our consultant doesn't do that, but also provide technical assistance to people outside the social equity platform. But without appropriation, right now, currently in there, it looks like we don't have the funds or the wherewithal to actually help out those 300, so tier one. So people, so we're asking, like, if there's no appropriation, that it be removed from the bill this year, because it's an impossibility. Otherwise, we're gonna have $270,000. It's not gonna go very far. And it's gonna just basically water down what we can provide these social equity folks. So that's our request, if that makes sense. I hope I didn't speak too fast at the end of the day here, but.
I'm still trying to find the section in the bill.
I think it's page 28, 29. Is that what I have on?
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And section 23.
Rep. Waters Evans has a question.
Rep. Nugent was first.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Rep. Nugent.
Jinx.
Oh, I was just out of curiosity, did you say this is the only type of business that we do this kind of support for?
It's the only sector that we do this for.
I had more of a comment, which is just that I always feel bad that we have set up the system to give people access to these licenses and these opportunities to, compensate for what happened to them in the past. And then they're not always folks who are, well-versed in running a small business or have the knowledge or expertise or resources to get it. And so I feel like under the guise of helping, we've made things really difficult for a lot of people.
Well, I mean, I think this program has helped out a lot.
That's what I
And we're finding that the social equity participants actually, I mean, obviously this was, we heard before, an oversaturated market.
Yes.
But we're finding it's a higher survival rate for folks who've gone through this program, the social equity participants that are staying and remaining because of hopefully what they have, reached out and have those resources, right? It does make a difference, right?
Yeah.
So
I feel like not funding that would be.
So but that's funded. I'm saying the $1 million, there's another ask in there about basically providing tier one.
Yeah.
And manufacturers and, all right, well, I can look at the language here.
Makers,
with my-
manufacturers, businesses.
Thank you.
Economic empowerment status by the board.
Yes. And so I talked to the Cannabis Control Board yesterday, the board members, and they are right, without an appropriation, they are great. And you can corroborate that with them, that the removal of that statement about the tier one manufacturers and processors and growers and producers, it's because without the money, this is just not going to work. But we have the $270,000 to continue our work with the social equity folks. And I think that'll get us through to the next fiscal year. I mean, obviously, there was a finite amount of people that are using this program. So a lot of them have been through the help. So we're not seeing that many more applicants come in this sector. So I think that there's enough money to continue next year. And if it's needed, we'll come and ask for additional funds. But I don't know, I heard mentioned before that the $1 million is not there. It could be there. You will find out if it is. So
We haven't had a chance to look at the Senate version that just barely came out. So I'm not sure what they did with this money, but we did request money. So anything is possible. Anybody else have any questions for our economic development witnesses? No? Thank you.
oh, my pleasure. Nice to meet you all. So
As well.
Thank you.
I think that's it for today. We've had a really long day. So appreciate everybody being here and keeping on task. With that, Nick, we can go off live and everybody have a good day.